Michael Steele. Exactly. Michael Steele, I want to show you, I don't do this very often on the show, but I do want to show a little snippet of something that happened on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace with Republican Jim Banks. Watch, we'll talk about it on the other side.
Is Joe Biden the legitimate president of the United States?
Yes, Joe Biden was elected. He was inaugurated on January 20th.
I want to go back to your actions after the election in November. You joined more than 100 House Republicans supporting a Texas lawsuit to overturn the election results in other states. The Supreme Court refused to hear the case. Then you voted on January 6th to, quote, uphold the Constitution by challenging Biden victories in several states. Do you still question whether or not Joe Biden won the election fair and square and got over 270 electoral votes fair and square?
Yeah, Chris, I stand by my vote to object on January 6th. I stand by the Texas lawsuit because I have serious concerns about how the election in November was carried out.
I mean, Michael Steele, part of me wants to ask you who's going to tell him, and the other part of me wants to ask you if the Republicans now represent one of the largest in terms of numbers anti-democratic movements in the world.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. We're streaming headlong into that truth about who Republicans are and how they see themselves right now. You've got the congressman talking out of both sides of his mouth. Yeah, Joe Biden was sworn in. He's legitimate president. Oh, but I have doubts about the election. It's just another, degree of stupid that we're asked to buy. And this is why I appreciate the reporting of Josh. And despite Mr. Krebs not necessarily being called a lawyer, he did a damn good job as a lawyer. Protecting and holding the line on this election and got summarily castigated for it. And so we need these two voices and forces out there, both an open, free approach by the media to go and dig into these truths and the legal representation and those who represent us out there sort of pursuing the truth on that front, because where the Republicans are right now, Nicole, they can't stand up against that. They cannot stand up against the scrutiny of the press or a legal system that's saying, wait a minute, time out. What you're saying is not what happened. Now, to Chris's point, how do you get the rest of the country that's sitting there going, oh, no, we Joe Biden didn't win because Donald Trump told us so. And so as long as that narrative persists, we're going to have, as Chris rightly points out, a very difficult time holding that line on democracy because you're going to have those folks paying and buying into this idea that what they're seeing happen didn't happen.
So, Michael Steele, what do we do? I mean, I made that list of anti-democratic conduct at my breakfast table. I could have spent 20 more minutes to come up with 20 more examples of the kind of anti-democratic conduct that American presidents are warned about by their advisors before they go traveling the globe or meeting with foreign leaders. And if the Republican Party and the numbers behind it that support it, I mean, I'm guessing the Republicans will be cheered by the purge of Liz Cheney on Wednesday. How do you make democracy something that the right cares about again?
Well, I think there are a number of ways that will reveal itself. One is, what do good citizens out there decide to do? How do they stand up and respond? And to that I say stay tuned, because there are responses coming in the wake of what we see happen on Wednesday. The other part of that, I think, is the ballot box at the end of the day, which is why, okay, so listen up, folks, this is what the play is. Why you see all of this activity on the ground right now to overturn elections by revising the electoral processes and who gets to vote, when they get to vote, how they get to vote, is to foreshadow upcoming elections where Republicans know their backs are going to be up against the wall. They want to put those mechanisms in place to overturn the results in 22 and in 24. And that's where you have to overwhelm the system with your legitimate vote. Because at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. You can't outrun 8 million more votes than the other guy, right? And as we saw on a congressional level, the narrowness of those elections will tell you just how important it will be for turnout. So I see those two pieces: citizens who decide to push back up against this, activists, former party officials, current party officials, push back on what the Republicans are doing, and what we as citizens ultimately get to do at the ballot box. So you can't let up and you can't sit down, because, you know, what Chris did in 2020 mattered. And what the Chris Krebs in going forward will have to do at the state and federal level will matter more.
I want to come back to you, Josh Dawsey, and your reporting, because you closed the circle for us. I mean, the campaign was in reaction to losses in 2018. And I wonder if you could just speak to how far up the awareness goes that all of these actions, what Michael Steele just detailed was the 47 states contemplating close to 400 voter suppression laws. We all watched the insurrection in horror on Wednesday. Liz Cheney likely to lose her leadership post. It is all based on a big lie that was orchestrated many, many, many years before, or at least 2 years before the general election. And I wonder if you could just characterize your sense of how many people were swept up in that, how many people were involved in that premeditated campaign, and how much of what they plan to do going forward is to continue to lie.
Well, you certainly see the former president propagating it almost every day. I mean, he's still litigating election results in New Hampshire and Michigan and Arizona most extensively, where he is just kind of fixated on that recount there. I mean, this is something that he's not going to stop anytime soon. I mean, I've talked to advisors close to him who say he may be litigating this election in 2022 and trying to make it as part of the midterm elections when he's out. I mean, he's certainly leading the purge against other Republicans who voted to impeach him, who have said things against his claims of electoral fraud. I mean, we've talked to a number of advisors, my colleague Ashley Barker and I have, who've gone down to Mar-a-Lago to meet with him to discuss a presidential library or a foundation or a whole host of other measures, and all he wants to talk about is the election. So this was a former president surrounded by allies, most of them out of the government, but some of them in the government, who began pushing this very aggressively throughout 2020 and will probably continue to do so.
Chris, I want to ask you about the security threat. Adam Kinzinger tweeted this. A few days before January 6th, our GOP members had a conference call. I told Kevin that his words and our party's actions would lead to violence on January 6th. Kevin dismissively responded with, "Okay, Adam, operator, next question," and we got violence. That's one of Liz Cheney's warnings as well. And I know Liz Cheney, from working with her, she sees the world through a security lens. She, I'm sure, on fiscal policy and foreign policy agrees with Republicans more than any Democrat, but she's standing alone, and it appears she believes her party's become a threat. Do you see it that way?
Well, I think there was a hearing or some sort of statement released in the last day or so, maybe it was today, about how the threats against sitting members of Congress have skyrocketed over the last several months since January 6th. So that shows you that there is some degree of significant degree of politically motivated violence targeting our elected officials. And it's not just at the federal level. It's happening all over the country at the state and local level. Katie Hobbs, the secretary out in Arizona, Governor Ducey just had to deploy another set of security forces to protect her. So there's no question that the language, the invective is all being used to once again continue to drive political violence against our fellow citizens. And it's, I've said it, it's not only it's undemocratic, it's downright un-American.
Chris, what do you think the sort of extremists will see when the Republicans successfully oust someone telling the truth about the big lie and the truth about the insurrection tomorrow, just from your security background?
It depends on what groups you're talking about. There are going to be those that are just looking for chaos and the acceleration towards the end of democracy, the Boogaloo Boy types. So anything that continues to cause friction and chaos in the ranks, that benefits them. There are also going to be the truists, those that have, those that say that they know in their heart of hearts that the president couldn't possibly have lost the election. I mean, look how many people turned out for his rallies. Those will say, serves you right for not being on the Trump train. And whether that actually manifests in violence in person, I don't know.